Hi guys, I'm really not in the greatest of moods because of some videos I've seen today and the people who support them. So I'm rambling. I don't actually have a script this time. I just saw it and I'm going to go for a walk in a minute. So here we go, I'll see if I can do it. So there was a Labour conference the other day and there was a 91-year-old war veteran who came and did a speech on the NHS, and he was telling us about his horrible time as a child, living up in the 20s and the 30s, a time when, you know, daughters had to be buried at the age of 10, couldn't even afford the funerals and all that, and was saying how great it is when he got to finally vote for somebody to rule over everybody when he was 22, and how proud he is that we have the creation of the NHS. And David Cameron, I'm not a David Cameron supporter, but David Cameron, keep your hands off our NHS. Well, look. Okay. Healthcare is not a right, okay? I have the right to stick a needle in my arm or have somebody else stick a needle in my arm if I want them to. If they consent to doing it, then yeah, sure as hell they can do it. I can have somebody cut open my chest and operate on my heart or operate on my brain or anything like that. I have complete right to be able to do that, but I don't have the right for somebody else to vote or to order somebody else to go to a doctor and give him treatment, give him service for free. Okay, because that is, I'm afraid to say, ladies and gentlemen, what the NHS is. The NHS is saying you don't have the right to pay for your own healthcare. We're going to do it for you. We're going to force doctors to pay for whatever you want, no matter what you are. And it sounds nice, okay, it does. It sounds nice that everybody gets to have free healthcare, but it's not a right. It's a good, okay? It isn't a right to force somebody to do something that they might not necessarily want to do. What if we added this same view of the NHS to something like food or transport or housing? You know, what if we said, right, you know what, we don't trust you to pay for your own food. We don't trust you to go and cultivate your own food. We find that just horrible, how people could live in this world without food. Who would ever think that? Tell you what, we're going to do it for you. We're going to pay for your food. We're going to make sure that everybody has food. And this was, to one degree or another, what was used in former Soviet countries, okay, where they didn't have capitalism, or they didn't have proper capitalism as we would view it as a libertarian. You know, would you agree to that? You would never ever agree to that. You would never agree that the government has a responsibility to prevent people from buying food and selling food. Instead, it all has to be provided from the government, from cradle to grave. Well, look, I understand why people are so upset about the idea of private healthcare, because, you know, I was for a while. I sympathise with that. I understand that people think that the American healthcare system is private. It's not, okay? $600 billion a year go into funding the American healthcare system. Every year it's about 100 billion, so not as much, but we have less people, whatever. But still, how can you call something private when 20% of the US budget goes into it? I don't think I call anything that has that amount of money going into it private. What we need to do with healthcare is allow everybody the ability to, if they wish, go and make a hospital on the street and help people out. Go and make a pharmacy for people to get drugs whenever they want. Give people the ability to hire their own doctors, go to whichever doctor they want to. Why not? Oh, because then people would jack up the prices. We need regulations involved because that's what's happened in America. No, again, I say America has a faulty system that is bureaucratic, that is corporatist, that is cronyist, okay? It is not private, furthest thing that we have that is technically not involved in the government in the same way that the British healthcare system is, but yet is still very much so on the leash of a government. So now you'd think, well, if we didn't have regulations involved, then the poorest people wouldn't be able to have all this lovely healthcare that we have here in the UK, even though it's basically crumbling. Well, no. There's a little thing that we used to have in this country, which the guy in the video doesn't mention, called fraternal societies. Okay, healthcare before the NHS wasn't just reserved for the wealthy. And healthcare sure as hell won't just be reserved for the wealthy once we get rid of the NHS, which I bloody hope happens at some point. Before the war, we had things called fraternal societies, and these were equivalent to what we would call today things like the Freemasons. Now, I know that people are just going to go, oh god, Illuminati, Freemasonry, whatever. Look, I don't fucking give a damn, okay? At the end of the day, what the Freemasons basically were in this context were people who would gather around in the community. They would form together a group of people, and they would help out the community on a very one-to-one basis. And people would, if they wanted to, pay into this community, pay into this group, and they would get treatment. They would get services from the society. But what happened during the war and after it is that England became heavily socialised. You know, I think we probably put Russia up for bargain. We were probably more socialised back then than Russia was. You know, super state control in this country, and we have all of our resources controlled, all our food controlled. We have rationing. You can't use actual money. So what happens is that we bring along this thing called the NHS, and we say, well, we'll help for you, and you just pay it for your taxes or whatever. And most things after the war were, let go, like rationing. We don't really have rationing anymore. Like I've said, food. Everybody can get food. It's not socialised, but everybody is able to get it, whether you have lots of money or whether you have no money at all. You're still able to get food. Yet with things like the NHS, we still got them. And it just pains me so much because we used to have this great working society, this great working system where you got healthcare, you got services that you needed. And now we have a system that is basically crumbling under its own feet. And I know what you're going to say, well, look what that guy's saying. It was a terrible, terrible time back then where you had to you couldn't even bury your daughter because you didn't have enough money. Right. People died more often in the past, not because we didn't have an NHS, okay? People were dying more often in the past because there weren't enough vaccines, or there weren't vaccines created. People died during childbirth because cesareans were harder to do. Imagine that. Imagine 100 years ago, you try and give birth to a child and you can't because you need cesarean. Before, maybe in the times when we didn't have anaesthetic properly, or we didn't have penicillin or whatever. Imagine how many people would have died back then if we didn't have the stuff that we have today. The NHS didn't create those things. If anything, it didn't create anything properly. What created it was science. What created it was free markets. And to just go and say that, no, you have a right to somebody else's labour. It's bloody stupid. We can do it on our own. We don't need a bloody helping hand from the government. If you're going to say, keep your hands off the NHS, please let me steal from other people. If you use the NHS, okay, go for it. You can't really do much in this country except pay for super expensive bupa care. Okay, but if you're going to say, I agree with the NHS, I 100% think, we should stand by it, maybe we should tinker around with it, but 100% we should stand by the NHS. Just think about what you're saying.